Welcome to the Agilists Aspire and Achieve in Your Agile Career video podcast series. This series is all about helping you grow, thrive, and making an impact in your career in the community with an Agile mindset. Whether you're just starting out or you're an experienced practitioner, we're here to bring you inspiring stories, actionable advice, and meaningful conversations that will help you navigate and excel in your Agile career, meeting some amazing mentors along the way. Get ready to aspire, achieve, and thrive in the next step of your journey. Vinnie, hello, welcome.
Hi, Renae. Lovely to see you again.
Yeah, you too. It's very exciting I'm very excited to be speaking to you again. You are the first person that I'm interviewing for our Women in Agile Agilists Aspire and Achieve podcast series. So thank you for being my first cab off the rank.
Oh, thank you. I actually thought I was late because I know that you sent the, respond quickly, respond within this deadline. And I was in Agile Alliance in Europe in Manchester. So I thought I was late, but very nice to be your first interviewee.
Yes. Before we get started, would you like to introduce yourself to our audience, please?
Absolutely. I'll do my best. I know that you always do a better job, but my name is Vinnie and I am an Agile coach. I've been doing this for about 13 years and I had a different life before Agile, completely different life. And about 13 years ago, I found Agile ways of working and I've never looked back since.
The rest is history.
Absolutely.
So how did you start and find your Agile career?
So at that time, I was working for a consultant company that dealt with civil engineering and mining, and that's actually where my first 10 years of my life was. I did HR, worked in startups. I looked after projects, contracts, portfolio as well. And it was during that time that we had people that were based all over at the mines and quite dispersed. And we had a problem where we weren't connected. They weren't any iPhones those days or, team adoption was not there. And I was thinking, how do we feel connected? And my husband, then my boyfriend, he's a developer, software engineer, and he was talking about, Agile ways of working in terms of, having the daily scrums. And I thought, maybe we could just have like a call 2 or 3 times a week. All of us could dial in and at least just check in on each other and see if there's anything that needed to be done. Because the quarry sites were all over Scotland at that point. And then for our next senior management meeting, I introduced a retrospective instead of having a boring meeting with minutes. Now, I was actually the youngest person there, and there was a huge gap between me and the other person was about 50, and I was in my 20s. And there I was carrying my first retrospective sailboat that I'd, mocked up, and they probably just thought, let's just humor her, But to be fair, they did let me do that, and I had no idea what I was doing. I probably had like 50 Post-its on it, which, it's like not a great idea. I had no idea how to facilitate properly, but, we went with the sailboat, and, and then I thought, I really like this, and I started to learn a lot more, primarily from my husband. And during that time, we decided to also move to Australia. So just for the record, I am Prince 2 qualified, and I know that we all can be friends, and a good Agile coach will obviously have all these tools and techniques that you can leverage. The wider your toolkit, the wider your box. It's better. Like I've done product, I've been in senior leadership teams, I've done strategy, vision, roadmap, all that goodness that you need. So I decided to move to Australia, and I think in Australia it's when I was really fully focused in Agile ways of working.
The Prince 2 thing, it's perspectives as well that you get, and I think the more perspectives you have and or experience in the different roles or areas. You mentioned HR and procurement, things like that. It's that's all that experience that you need when you're trying to build that toolkit as a coach. You want to be able to be empathetic with all kinds of people. You're not always just going to be working with developers or whatever it is. So it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. So you mentioned Australia. So you went Scotland, then Australia. What other countries have you worked in?
So I went Scotland, and during my time working in the UK, predominantly Edinburgh and Northern Ireland and England as well, and a bit of Europe, I got sent to Southeast Asia because the company had decided to open a branch in Southeast Asia. Mm-hmm. So I was sent to lead that that part of that division. So I was there for about 2 years, maybe about 2 years. So
Wow.
the region there was Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, and a bit of Thailand. Yeah.
Nice.
So some markets we were successful and some markets we were not so successful. Yeah. And then I moved back to Edinburgh and then moved to Sydney.
And then you stayed in Sydney for how long?
I stayed in Sydney for six years, I think, six and a half years. And then I went for a holiday to Perth, to Western Australia. And I absolutely loved it. I absolutely loved it. There was just something there that was just calling me. And honestly, I was actually struggling in Sydney. That's the truth. I'm not really sure why. And maybe because I'd moved quite a bit. And I think the older you get, the more difficult the move becomes. So and at that point in Sydney, I said to my husband, I said, I think we just need to return to Edinburgh for a while. Maybe, our parents are getting old. That's the thing, I really want to be there for them. But I went for a holiday in Western Australia and I said, I think I could live here. I think I would just like to give it one more try. I got a job there through a recruiter. Shout out, you know who you are. And I was doing fly in, fly out. And I know that's absolutely nuts. Like to do fly in, fly out from Sydney to Perth, it was 5 hours ish each way. So I used to go on a Monday and come back on a Friday. And I just said, I just need to move here. It's just getting a bit too much. It was a contract role. And with contract roles, it's a risk. So I did that for 3 or 4 months and decided to move. We decided to move, packed our Sydney apartment and moved to Perth. And after 2 weeks of having fun, it was lockdown.
Oh, all right.
And that's where I spent, the rest of my 2.5 years in Western Australia. But it was a good state to be locked down in. It was very big and wide, and he had a lot of things to do.
Yeah. Wow, you have been around the world. So, how would you describe your career with all of the places that you've lived?
I guess a few things, right? I go through change quite a lot, which is why I feel there is a bit of authenticity with me and this role, because I do put myself through a lot of change. Moving houses, moving countries, moving culture, even Sydney to Perth, New South Wales and WA, they're completely different culture-wise. And then living in the UK, it's not been easy, actually. It looks really nice. It looks really, glamorous, like, you live and work in different places and things like that. But to get a job, to get a role, to establish yourself, especially that, you and I are actually self-employed. Some people call it contractors, in some countries they call it freelancers, in some countries, you trade under your own company. Effectively, it's the same thing. We work for ourselves. We have to look for our own work. getting your network out there and looking for work, it has been challenging, particularly during my time in Australia, especially in Sydney. I know we're both in Australia and we did not know each other. And a lot of people actually said, oh, you're in Australia. I didn't really know you existed. And that was because I am quite shy. And I was never really visible until the last 3 or 4 years that I became visible and grew my confidence on social media and on, I mean, my only social media is LinkedIn, by the way. So, you kind of have to do it for work, but some of it I actually do enjoy, putting out my thoughts and putting out, my little banter videos. My aim is just to get somebody to smile and laugh, and that would be great. But you really do need to have a network. You need to invest in your network, and times have not always been great. Economically, it's been really difficult.
Yeah. What did you notice about Agile in the different countries that you've lived?
I'd just like to say that these are not my cats. These are my mother-in-law's cats. I am a dog person. I am a dog person.
I'm a both person. I grew up with dogs, and then when I met my husband, he had a dog and a cat, and then we had the cat then, and then we've just had cats ever since. Cats are a lot easier in that they look after themselves. Mostly, you got to feed them, but the rest of it's pretty easy. You don't have to exercise them and things like that. But my parents still have dogs, or a dog now, so I still get my dog fix. Yet to explore the dogs in the neighborhood here, but my old neighborhood, I had plenty of dogs that I would visit on my daily walks. So I got my dog fix. Anyway, that was a sidebar. I can't remember the question. What was the question? What have you noticed about Agile in the different places that you've lived?
I was going to say, I don't remember the question either. I do think with some countries, the adoption is really quick. And with some countries, it's a bit slower. And I'm also talking about the Agile and the Agile mindset. And the other way that I like to look at it is where we're moving from in terms of, leading with frameworks, which is what a lot of people think. We lead with frameworks. No, we don't. We don't lead with frameworks. We find a problem. And that's why I think for me, like how initially in my journey, I found a problem that we weren't actually connecting as a team. We wouldn't see each other for 2 or 3 weeks. Somebody would be doing a site blast, or somebody we know would be going on the roads and checking things out. And that was our problem. We weren't communicating. So the adoption in some places, it's still, very much, framework and very much mindset and where we're actually moving. But honestly, I think it is down to company specific and also the coaches that they hire. Also, if a company thinks that they know Agile and they think, oh, they can assess what Agile is, or, when they have no experience in Agile at all and they want to hire an Agile coach, that's where the difficulty lies. Like I've had people give me feedback who, you and I would be like, okay, things like you didn't have, Jira or tools on your CV. Like that's, I'm an Agile coach, not a Jira coach. There's some things that we just don't need to put in to optimize our CV. So basically that's the understanding, like, you're just going to coach a Scrum team. So I would say by far it is like the mindset, and culturally some countries are bounded by that mindset as well, and the people that they hire. The other thing is countries with a lot more diversity, like a lot more migrants, like in Australia, like myself and everybody. I think it's much more rich in terms of the ideas and the innovation that we bring as well. So not much of it. I don't really see much, but I do see leaders and laggards. Like what happens here will happen a bit later here. Kind of like the seasons, right?
Yeah.
Who gets summer first and who gets winter? Yeah.
Yep, definitely. So what have you observed about the role of career development in Agile over the years?
So this is a really interesting question, and thank you for asking that question. I think that there are some of us that actually invest a lot in our personal development, and we know that a course doesn't mean competence. Knowledge does not equate competence. Some of us have all these courses that we use as learning, as toolkits in our box, as additional, as addendum. Like I've always said, to be really good agile coach, you must have done something before. This is not a graduate job. This is not an entry job. This is not a first job. Some people have never even been part of a team. So how can you coach somebody when you've not, been in their shoes, right? So that's quite tricky. I am more concerned about the ones I know as a community, we kind of know who's who, the active ones, the ones that go to meetups, the ones that actually read. It's not all course based, you can learn from each other, you can have conversations, you can go to conferences. But my concern is always the ones that are not engaged in. But my bigger concern is the leaders and the people that are not present. So I think they need to come, because they're always the ones that are hiring. They always think that they know what Agilists do, and that perception and that understanding could be a lot better if they actually show up. And I think you know this yourself in Australia when we go, Agile Australia and things like that, which, by the way, I've never been. I did say I kind of didn't exist before. It's a lot of agile coaches. It's not decision makers. It's not C-suite leaders, and it's not frameworks. It is a mindset and a change mindset. And we all like to think that we have the growth mindset, but no, I'm still working at it. You know, I'm still learning and growing.
Absolutely,
I'm not perfect.
Absolutely, and
yeah.
You never will get there either. You're always learning something different, something new, every single day, usually by stuffing up or getting some feedback. I'm like, I received some really tough feedback last week from a senior leader. And at first I kind of defended myself, and then I stewed over it, and then I thought it was unfair, and, went through my little cycle of, and then I reflected since. I'm like, okay, so what do I need to do differently here to help him to see the value that I bring, and also how can I support and teach him about what my role is, what a coach is. And because, yes, so as you said before, there's that previous experience where they have had this experience with a agile coach who might have just been on a training course and nothing else, and then that's what you're being, that's what you should be doing. You should be doing what that person did. I'm like, well, no, that's not how I work, and that's not what I believe in, and that's not what I want to do. For that, this is not going to work. Sorry. Yes, interesting.
Thank you for sharing that, Renae. Very brave, and I'm sure our listeners would really benefit from that. Thank you.
It's okay. Agile Australia is in a week and a half. Not next week, week after, Monday, Tuesday. And this year they've got, I'm going along because there's not many conferences in Australia, so I go to the ones that I can. And they've got a stream for executives. So it'll be interesting to see how many people like kind of workshop-y things. It'd be interesting to see how many people they actually get in those. And there's a lot of case studies, storytelling kind of time slots in the program this time as well. So a little bit different than previous years. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes.
Yeah, I'd like to throw another curveball in. So when we actually moved back to Edinburgh, because like I said, our parents are getting old, and me and my husband, we are the only kids of our parents, And I know it's a really difficult concept to understand, but my husband only has his mom, and that's his last remaining family member. And I think it's similar to me as well. A very dispersed family, and come from a very non-traditional family unit, family makeup. However, when we moved back, my husband got sent on a project or a role in Italy. So while our stuff was coming, in which it takes 6 months because it's COVID, and I know you were laughing at this, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
and finding work was tricky. We didn't realize when we moved back this was what's happening in the UK, and this is what's happening to the economy. And as a contractor, if you're British, you would be familiar with the inside and outside IR35, which I didn't know. And when I moved back, that's what I was faced in. Both my husband and I were self-employed contractors in Australia, and we were very happy there with the roles there. However, when we moved back, there was this whole difference in contracting, and of course my husband got a role, so whoever that gets something, take it first. And so the role was in Italy, and so we and I spend time between Italy and in Edinburgh, and it's been a huge shock actually. And I know a few of his friends, foreign friends, have always said, if you kind of lived in Italy and if you dealt with the bureaucracy, you can do life. And it's been very, very, very challenging. Like, I can't even begin to explain, the stress of this, and, moving back and forth and looking after family at the same time, myself with my work and my job. But there are situations where, what do you do? Yeah. The other thing I realized when I moved back was the absolute shock in Edinburgh and how expensive things have gotten. We returned every year for a holiday, but we didn't in the last 3 years because of lockdown. And everything had gotten so expensive, even just a 2-bedroom flat with one toilet, which it's really tiny for Australians. And it was a huge shock. So for economic reasons, you have to do what you have to do, and then the remote working, come back to work, the 2 days on site was just not really helpful. There weren't many roles going in Scotland at all, especially in Edinburgh. Even if you want to travel 2 days in Scotland somewhere, it would be really, really tough. So it's I urge companies to actually not just mandate that 2 days on site. Like, I don't mind traveling, but I like to do purposeful, intentional, meaningful travel. And I know you're nodding because you're in the same situation as well. So, I have been traveling. I've had roles where I traveled to England 2 days a week, and I'm sitting alone on a Teams call in a booth. And that's not fair.
Yeah.
That's really not great. People have, kids, old people that they want to look after, or different kinds of life. We all don't have this linear life that everybody thinks it is. So I guess, that's the big curveball, right? So
Plea.
You weren't expecting
It's
that,
your
weren't you?
No, but I, as you was alluded to, I travel for my current role once a month, and it's still within Australia, but it's 3.5 hour flight, or 3 hour flight, but from door to door, it's like 6 hours, 7 hours, depending on delays and things like that. So by the time I get to the office, I've already kind of worked a full day, or been awake for a full day. But it was the same kind of thing. So when I go over, my calendar is back to back of the days that I'm there, but it's very purposeful. So I'm, Renae, when are you coming to the office? Okay, we want this workshop, we're going to do this, and this. So I'm there purposely doing things in person. People are coming into the office because I'm there to participate in the workshops or training or whatever I'm doing when I'm there. Because there was one time very early on, it was like my first or second trip, and I just sat at my desk in the office and I'm just on Zoom calls all day. I'm like, I can do this at home. I didn't have to travel all this. It's a waste. So yes, now we make it very, very purposeful so that I don't have time to do anything except I don't get time to socialize or catch up with people or anything because I'm in workshops or whatever. But it makes a difference when there's that consideration, I guess. When there is that, I mean, it's not mandated for me, but it is. My husband's employer mandates number of days in the office as well, and it doesn't work for everybody on the days that you're mandating and things like that. So, especially when you're working, your team isn't all there either, and they're like half your team's in India or in the Philippines or something. So,
yes, that's another thing that I noticed. Your team is, and you just go into the office and you're just dialing in, and I just don't see the point or the rationale, and you can't really find the person that came up with this rule. But the other thing is, I always say not all agile coaches live in the same postcode, but it's the same thing. Not all great finance people, marketing people, lawyers, whatever that you want to say, they all don't live in the same postcode. But I guess for me, like, moving and living in different countries, there is that part about, friendship as well, building relationships, finding people. And most of the time, the agile community has always been there for me. That's how I quickly find people and make friends, because like when I moved to Perth and my stuff was not going to arrive, it was, my lovely Agilist friends in shout out to Synergy, Mari and Rhonda. They were like, don't worry, we've got microwave, we've got this, we've got that, you can move into your house, no problem, and, Hazel, of course, we've always kept in touch. They've always been my support. And even, in Italy, I attended a meetup with the local meetup, and they were like, Vinnie, we were waiting for you. And I thought, that's really nice,
Yeah.
So, it is nice. It does sound glamorous, and certain things are nice. People do help if you ask. It's also sometimes, but it does take time. And I think the ability to build relationships quickly is quite important. And I think that's why sometimes at workplaces, I think somebody said to me as a comment, they said, you build relationships really quickly, and that actually stuck with me for years. I just said years like an Australian, but
sounded fine to me.
Which is fine. So I am, and it's true. I do need to get up and running really quickly. I do need to get things done, help, especially here, in a different language, and they all drive on the other side of the road. But people have been really, really nice, particularly my husband's colleagues. They've been super nice, always looking after us, taking us out, introducing us to different cultures. And then, back in Edinburgh, I do have a few of my friends. I work with, also shout out to Suzanne Morrison. She has been an absolute pillar to me and myself. So, yeah.
So I want to close this episode, and I want to ask you what final wisdom that you'd like to share with our listeners. You've mentioned community, you've mentioned building relationships. Any other final wisdom you have for our listeners who are listening to this particular podcast series, to help with their careers, with their agile careers, wherever they're up to in those careers?
I fundamentally believe in getting a coach. Every single Agilist should be open to coaching. I always get somebody to help me in anything, just even to see my blind spots, right to, the talks that I put together for the conferences. There's so much value in that. Also helps you learn and grow. And it just brings that whole other perspective that you didn't think that you had, helps you be more self-aware. But as the series is about, working in an international career, it is hard. It is uncomfortable when you move countries, and, you have to work with people with different cultures. And yes, that's tough, but that's also the work that we do. Mm-hmm. So I'd highly recommend that if anybody, they're thinking about moving abroad or, doing it, do it. Doesn't need to be for life. If it doesn't work, you can always move back, right? There's always something else. I'm British and proud. I'm also very proud Australian. So there you go. And you have a lot of these adopted homes, like just working even in Southeast Asia and things like that. You pick up languages, you pick up different food variety, different cultures, because wherever I am, wherever I go, I do work with diverse people. I do work with diverse teams. And there is value in hiring somebody with this experience. But just if you're thinking about it, do it. And if you'd like to contact me and find out more and talk about it, just let me know.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm going to stop leaving. And as part, I guess I prioritize more, this than the experiences of my life, because that makes me hopefully a more richer person, I guess, or trying my best.
Thank you. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that advice and for closing the episode that way. It's beautiful. Thank you, Vinnie. Thank you again for joining me in this first episode of the series. It was really awesome speaking to you again. I love our time together.
Thank you, Renae.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Agilists Aspire and Achieve in Your Agile Career. We hope you found inspiration and practical tips to elevate your Agile journey. Remember, growth doesn't happen alone, so consider exploring the Women in Agile Mentorship Program and/or follow the Agile Careers MPO on LinkedIn to see more content geared towards advancing your own career. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Let us know what topics you'd love to see next. Keep inspiring, keep achieving, and continue thriving in your career.